So welcome to This Week in Jewish History. I am Netta from B'nai Israel, as you all know. I see one or two new names. I'm not sure. So I will sit on the Shlicha B'nai Israel because I'm also part of a project called Life Online. I told you, always when I start talking, that's when somebody joins. So I'm also a part of a project called Life Online that I cooperate with other shlichim in the area, also beyond, to create content, a variety of stuff from philosophy to history to about experiences and leading ladies of Israel, really a wide variety of content. So I'm now going to share in the chat really quickly the information, including also the B'nai join virtually, which also we have a bunch of stuff going on as well. So I'm in charge of the weekly email. So it comes out on Friday, and I promise you that it's really short and sweet. So I would be happy to share the information there as well. And Rotem is now joining us, but you just missed the pitch for Life Online. So, oh well, next time. Rotem is also in Israel, so it's very appreciative that she is joining as well. Okay, great. So now we are going to begin about This Week in Jewish History, and I'll just preface before we actually go into the events themselves that I choose 5 events that I can basically talk a little bit more about that I think are interesting and highlight something about Jewish history, or specifically Israel. I often find events that have to do with Israel's history. And there's 2 calendars that I look at. One is the Gurion calendar. So we have June 7th up until the June 13th. And we also have the Hebrew calendar, which I didn't really find anything this week that is according to the Hebrew calendar, but just for your information, it's the 15th of Sivan to the 21st of Sivan. I go from Sunday to Saturday. So I know that Americans, the first day of the week is Monday, but I do Sunday to Saturday. So that's how I framed it more or less. And by talking to some people about this, I tried to create and connect all the different 5 events that I'm talking about in a theme, or try to connect them somehow so that they're not just 5 random events, but in fact that they're connected to one another in some way. So they're ordered by the oldest to the newest, and actually the newest is something that I was alive for and very much remember. So it'll be really from 1930 up until really recently, so it really covers a long period of time. So with that, I will begin. I'm going to leave it like this because otherwise I can't access my notes, or it's harder for me to share. And our first event actually is a little bit before the founding of the State of Israel, and it is from, here we go, June 7th, 1930, when Magen David Adom, or in Hebrew it's Mada because it's the 3 letters Mem, Dalet, Aleph, so you say Mada, was founded officially. Actually, so I'll just explain a little bit of the background of Mada and the development, and also explain the picture of what we see here as well. So Mada was actually first used during the First World War in 1915. And it was to help people who were wounded during the First World War in Man-Made Palestine, but it quickly shut down in 1921 at the end of the war, following the end of the war, basically. However, because there were really known riots that took place in Man-Made Palestine in 1929, Magen David Adom found itself being needed, which is sorry, I didn't explain. It's an emergency care unit, so you can see ambulances here. They are emergency services, so they provide ambulances. They provide, first care in a crime scene, or any accident scene. So they would be the first to come, basically. So they were again needed in 1929 following the Arab riots, and then they were founded officially again in 1930. So this is their official date of foundation, and it's actually debated who founded it in 1930. There one source says, or some people believe, that it was a group of 7 people from a kibbutz in 7 people together who founded it. And some people say it was a nurse named Karen Tenenbaum. Wikipedia will tell you it's Karen, but other sources say otherwise. So it's still debated today. So then the first branch was founded in Tel Aviv, so it had official branch. And basically 5 years afterwards, there were 2 branches opened up in Jerusalem and in Haifa. And in 5 years, it actually became operational nationally throughout the Mandate Palestine, because in 1936, 1939, there were Arab riots once again. So really, the emergency care unit services were unfortunately needed, but also at the same time were able to happen due to the fact that this was founded in 1930. So when Israel was founded in 1948, it operated, and only in 1950, July of 1950, the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, recognized Magen David Adom as their national emergency services unit. And this is actually interesting because the UN and internationally, they only recognized Magen David Adom in 2006. The reasons can be political, however you see it. However, I do want to know that what they mention is that the fact that the red shield, I think what it's called, the red, in English, I think the Magen David Adom, the actual translation is Red Shield of David. They claimed that it was not an international symbol. So they had a whole debate of what the symbol would be, and they turned it into this, which they call the red, it's not diamond, they don't call it diamond, even though it is a diamond, they call it red crystal. So they basically surrounded the Star of David with this crystal. So internationally, this is the symbol outside of Israel. In Israel, you have, this star. That's the symbol on the ambulances. So it's interesting to know that in order for it to be a known international emergency services, it had to have that red diamond around and the Star of David inside. It was a whole debate for a while. Only in 2006, that meant that Israel could have emergency services or ambulances going to places like Gaza and the West Bank during various operational occurrences that were happening. So that changed in 2006, and up until that point, there were often conflicts or issues with the Red Cross going into those areas and having to deal with Israel as well. So I know that as a soldier in Hebron, you have Red Cross there as well, and there are no clashes, but there's just a little bit of tension with them being in these areas that are so problematic and full of tension in any case. So Madda does a wide variety of stuff. Besides providing, ambulances and doing that emergency services, they're based on volunteers. They have 15,000 volunteers, more or less, and they also train them. They also provide courses of first aid to high school. So I learned how to first aid when I was in 8th grade by somebody who's from Madda. They also have blood drives around Israel. I can tell you that pretty much on a weekly basis, my campus would have blood drives. And it really is part of the culture that people donate blood quite often. And so the Madda is the ones who have the ambulances to donate blood. And they really are in charge of a wide variety of stuff that have to do with medical services that are emergency care, basically. They also have an overseas special program. It's called Madda Overseas, that Israel Experience, who's in charge of various birthright programs, operates. But they also have volunteers who are coming from abroad to help assist with emergency care as well and provide that information and knowledge to people who are from abroad as well. Yeah, that was basically what I wanted to share. There's one more thing that I wanted to show here. So the picture on the right, I don't know if you've seen it before, but basically it was shared during the whole period of COVID, and it became really known. So this is a ambulance of Magen David Adom, of Madda, of the Red Shield of David. You have two people who are volunteers or work in the ambulance. One is Jewish, the other is Muslim, and they are praying side by side. So it was a way to show that during COVID, during times of crisis, the people of Israel stand together, they stand next to each other, they work together, they cooperate, and it became a really known post that I saw multiple times all over the place in the news and in a lot of pro-Israel groups. So that's another representation of Madad that is relevant to today. So really, in this case, we see that a foundational moment in Israel of creating emergency medical services happened this week in Israel, 1930, before the state was founded, and actually had operated during the First World War as well. So this is really a foundational moment, or a foundational organization that was founded and created during this week in Jewish history. And that brings us to our next event, which is on June 13th, 1950. And remember, 1950 is also the year that Madad was recognized by Israel as an emergency care service. But on June 13th, 1950, was the Hachuvi Decision. So this decision, and this is a completely different subject, we're talking about legal right now, but also foundational at the same time. And that's our theme for today. We're talking about foundational occurrences that happened in Israel this week. And so the Hachuvi Decision was basically the idea that instead of a constitution that Israel would write, instead they would write it chapter by chapter over a course of time in the form of basic laws. So Hachuvi is the name of this person we have in the picture over here. His name is Yizhar Hachuvi. He was a member of Knesset at the time and also a lawyer, and therefore came up with this idea that they would not have a constitution, that they would be basically writing the constitution piece by piece over a long period of time. And the latest basic law that was written as part of this decision was in 2018. So I will talk about that as well. So the whole issue of Israel and the constitution is a big deal because Israel does not have a constitution, but I will kind of backtrack and talk about where the idea came from and what are the reasons that there isn't in fact a constitution. So let me just go to the right tab. So I'm going to read now from the Declaration of Independence. 1 second, I opened a video by mistake. Here we go. Okay. So I'm going to read from Israel's Declaration of Independence in English. Sorry, one moment. Here we go. So this is the Declaration of Independence in English. The Declaration of Independence is divided into three parts that can be defined as past, present, and future. And the reason I know this relatively well is because I was a tour guide in the Knesset before my Shlichut. So this is pretty much something that I would talk about all the time on a daily basis. But we can notice in the middle here that we declare that with effect from the moment of the termination of the mandate, being tonight, the eve of Sabbath, the 6th Iyar, 15th of May, until the establishment of the elected regular authorities of the state in accordance with the Constitution, which shall be adopted by the elected Constituent Assembly no later than the 1st of October, 1948. So in that case, we see that Israel was supposed to be writing a constitution by the 1st of October, 1948, which of course did not happen. Clearly, because in 1950, they came up with this new decision. So what are the reasons that I was told as a tour guide that there was no constitution is different from what I read in this book that I have right here that's called Ben Gurion and the Constitution, which I read actually by chance relatively recently. So there's additional reasons in this book as well. The main reason that is also mentioned in the book and also I was told as a tour guide is because of the resources that they wanted to be put into all the people who were moving to Israel. They wanted to be building new settlements around Israel, and they wanted to put all their effort and energy, not into writing a new constitution, but basically providing all the resources that were necessary and needed for all the people who were moving to Israel at the time. And they were expecting a lot of olim, a lot of immigrants from all over the world who would change the way Israel would look and also basically have different basic needs that would be necessary. I also just want to add and put a pause if anybody has any questions about the events, because they are different, please just feel free to write it in the chat, and I'll refer to it at the end, or write it down, and we'll have questions at the end, of course. So back to the reason of why there isn't a constitution. Another reason was that Israel's borders were not defined, which need to be written in a constitution. Other reasons were about that often people claim is the issue of religion and state, that you had so many different groups of people that were not only in Israel at the time, but also people who were moving to Israel that would determine what Israel would look like. And it was an issue of, do we now determine those kinds of issues when we're having so many people move, and we have so many different groups right now here as well. The other thing was that the people who were in charge at the time of the foundation of Israel, during the reading of the Declaration of Independence, it was called the People's Council. They were chosen by certain people who were in Mandate Palestine, but they were in charge of only the Jewish people. And now they also had Israeli Arabs that were under the state of Israel. So in this case, it wasn't completely a free and fair election that they were voted into. It was a group of 37 people and not members of Knesset that were officially voted by the people. And the first elections were only in January 1949. So they felt that it was not fair to be determining such an important document for Israel when it wasn't a bunch of people that generally the people voted for. So those are the general reasons that I was told as a tour guide that there isn't a constitution. But in this book, there's an additional reason that I think is important to mention as well. That Ben-Gurion thought that, according to this book, that the constitution wasn't necessary. That they were creating a new country that had, basic functions that were important, and they had equality for people, without gender, religion, or race as an issue. It was put already in the Declaration of Independence, and he thought that it would be more divisive rather than uniting. And at the time where they were dealing with so many enemies and fighting so many different people, that issue of being divisive and causing tension and war internally rather than uniting people was a problem. And they were concerned that it would not only be divisive between different groups of Israeli society, but also different beliefs of, Zionism, for example, is mentioned in the book, that some people believed, in cultural Zionism, and not necessarily that a state is necessary. So you have all these people who would all of a sudden create this binding document that is legally more important than any other law. And Ben-Gurion, according to this book, didn't think that it was something that was absolutely necessary and worth fighting for at such a volatile time. That was also important to remember, it was during the Independence War as well that was still ongoing. So those are the reasons that there isn't a constitution. And today we have these 13 basic laws instead that were legislated over the years. So those are divided into three. The first bunch are basically different government bodies. So we have basic law of the government, basic law of the Knesset, basic law of the army, basic law of the president. So really all the different bodies that we have in Israel are defined in these basic laws that are, again, supposed to be little chapters of the Constitution. There are other two laws that talk about basic human rights generally. So one is about freedom of man and respect generally, and also freedom of profession as well. So those are two basic laws that are about general people and humans' rights. And then the last one, which has caused most controversy in 2018, was the nation law. And this defined Israel as a Jewish state. And for many people worldwide, and also for a bunch of people in Israel itself, and also the Jewish community, it made them feel as if they were second-grade citizens. The fact that it was defined as a Jewish state, with Jewish symbols and Hebrew as the official language. When the men of, who are Druze, they serve in the army, they pay their taxes, they're a part of this country as well. And all of a sudden, they really felt that they were the minority. And it's something that here in America feels very strange to hear that, because the country what we have here, a republic, is very different than having a nation state. Nation states are mostly known in Eastern Europe, where you have a majority ethnic group and then a minority small group as well. But this is the only Jewish state that exists in the world. And I've spoken to the lawyer who explained this to me, but just to be aware that in a constitution, often the way the state is defines itself is put in the constitution as well. But it's important to be aware that yes, the law passed and it is defined as a Jewish state with the Jewish symbols and the Hebrew language defined as part of this nation state, but it still causes controversy up until today. So that is an additional foundation, important event that happened during this week in the legal department. So this really determined how Israel sees a legal situation, the fact that they see it as something that's more flexible and that it's something that changes in its dynamic. And then also we have the medical side as well with the emergency services. And that brings me to the next event, which now I have a video. So not only me talking all the time, and this is in environmental issues. So in June 10th, 1964, the National Water Carrier Project began, and it's called in Hebrew Hachuvi Decision, and I will show the video first before talking myself. Okay, so here we go. Here's the video. We'll share the sound, make the screen big. Here we go.
המוביל הארצי הוא מפעל של 130 קילומטר מהצפון, מהכנרת ועד הדרום. הוא מסוגל להעביר 450 מיליון קוב מים בשנה. זה המפעל שהביא לפריחת הנגב, הביא מים בעיקר לחקלאות ויותר מאוחר גם לשתייה. זאת העשייה החלוצית של פעם, ומשתבצת בתוך הפסיפס הזה של הכנסת ומכון ויצמן, גם תשתיות, גם מדע, גם ממשל. בניית המוביל הארצי בעצם סימנה את ההתפתחות של מדינת ישראל כאימפריה בתחום המים, גם בתחומי ההולכה, בתחום טכנולוגיות המים וההתפלה. זאת הייתה בעצם אבן הדרך הראשונה בדרך למה שאנחנו מכירים היום כמעצמת קלינטק במים ואנרגיה.
Just pausing because I thought it was too fast, so I'm letting you guys read it before I continue.
התחומים שבהם קבוצת שיקום בינוי עוסקת היום הם בעצם קו ישיר מהאתגרים של שנות ה-50 וה-60. קו ישיר אל המאה ה-21, שבה האתגרים יהיו מים, סביבה ואנרגיה.
So the National Water Carrier was officially started in 1964, but the project began in 1953. And just to put it in American terms, I know kilometers is not terms that you usually use. It's 81 miles long. And let me just find it. And carries up to 118,877 gallons a year and 19 million gallons of water per hour. So that's probably not true what I just said. So 19 million gallons of water per hour. So I'm sure the 118, that's probably in billion or million. So apologies for not having the correct measurement. I tried to make it clear. But basically it's 19 million gallons per hour. That's what I was, that's the information that I received, or when I was looking into it specifically. So as I said, the project began in 1953, and it was kept quiet because they were concerned that different terror groups or individuals would want to hurt the initiative, basically. And the idea is that water would be brought from the north, from the Kinneret, all the way to the south, in order to support agriculture that was taking place there. And I want to show you also how the agriculture was here. So this is the route of the National Water Carrier from the Kinneret in the north through Tel Aviv here, Rosh Hashanah, and then it goes all the way down here. So Be'er Sheva is considered the capital of the south, and it was a way to actually bring water that could be used for the agriculture in the south and really bloom the south in Israel's early years. In addition, with so much people moving, it also was used for personal usage as well, rather than just agriculture. So in addition, another thing that I wanted to note is that in 2009 was the first salination plant that was founded. And Israel since then has become really a known empire in regards to salination, really providing information for countries worldwide. And really become expertise in that field. And that's due to the lack of water that is in Israel, and having that need and necessity to create a solution. So that is another foundational event that happened this week. And here I'll refer back to the PowerPoint. So we can see that 3 events happened this week that really were a part of the foundation of Israel and creating important things that happen in Israel. So we have medical, legal, and environmental as well, with the national water carrier beginning. And at this point, I'm going to jump because we're going in the future. And in some sense, it's foundational, but also it's building upon that second level of creating security and building capabilities. And that we can see with June 7, 1981, Operation Opera, which began and took place. And that is when the nuclear reactor in Iraq was bombed by the Israeli Air Force. And of course, though, the Mossad helped with that as well. This operation it took place in 1981, but I'll just provide the background for why this took place, basically. So in the 1960s, Iraq began to develop its nuclear capabilities, but expanded upon that during the 1970s. Their partner being France, who provided equipment and assistance. Also, the scientist that helped them was in Paris, so there definitely was coordination. France claimed that it was for peaceful purposes as well as Iraq, but there were a few countries who did not believe that claim, and Israel took various measures in order to prevent Iraq from receiving those capabilities. In the 1970s, as I said, they received equipment from France and began to build near Baghdad. So what Israel also did was that they prevented a shipment from going to Iraq. They sabotaged it. They also assassinated the scientist who was helping build a nuclear reactor in Paris. So there are a lot of events that happened up until this point of the operation itself. But what's interesting that happened is that in 1980, the Iraq-Iran war began as well. And Iran actually tried to attack the nuclear reactor first, but they were concerned of attacking the nuclear reactor directly because they were concerned that it had nuclear energy or power, and that it would cause a reaction. So they didn't do it directly, but they did bomb around it. So they actually ended up talking to Israel and cooperating a little bit because they both had a mutual enemy. And just think about it. Imagine today that Israel and Iran would cooperate. It's kind of hard to believe, but they did. They did speak with one another regarding Iraq generally. So what happened was that many scientists at the time were saying that Paris was not providing enough plutonium to actually reach capabilities, that it would be decades before they actually had nuclear capabilities. But Israeli intelligence in October 1980 said that in October 1981, Iraq would be operational with its nuclear power. So at that point, they had to make a decision of what were they going to do. What were they going to do regarding bombing the nuclear reactor in that case? So there were a few opinions. One was saying that yes, we should attack because they are a threat, but some were also concerned that it would affect ties with France. It would hurt ties with Egypt that just 2 years before they had signed a peace agreement with, and that it would cause complete chaos in the Middle East. However, Begin, who was the prime minister at the time, decided that he wanted to bomb the reactor before it became operational, and before there was a chance of that. In the end, it was passed that in October 1980, they knew that they were going to attack a nuclear reactor sometime in the future. But as you can see, it only happened in June 1981. Up until that point, they were doing drills, and 3 pilots actually died in the process of these drills. They were collecting aerial intelligence. They were also collecting intelligence generally, and a lot of research was done before the operation actually happened. So on June 7th at 3:55 p.m. Israel time, the planes took off towards the nuclear reactor. And what was the main difficulty or concern was the fact that Israeli pilots would have to go through the airspace of either Jordan or Saudi Arabia before actually reaching Iraq. So what they did is they they practiced their heavy Arab-speaking accents, and if they flew over Jordan, they pretended they were Saudi Arabians that got confused. And if they were flying over Saudi Arabia, they pretended that they were Jordanians who got confused. So in that way, they kind of were able to pass both airspaces and reach Iraq, no problem. The whole operation on the nuclear reactor, which we can see here in this picture, and by the way, these are all the pilots that participated in the operation. It took exactly 2 minutes. They dropped 84 bombs on the reactor, and 16 actually reached the core itself of the reactor, and it blew up. And they killed 10 Iraqi soldiers and one French civilian. According to their timing, there weren't supposed to be people working. They were supposed to be on their lunch break, which is why they chose that specific time to bomb the nuclear reactor. Unfortunately, there were casualties from the attack. As a result, internationally, Israel was really criticized for what they did, and it was looked down upon that they did this operation. But long term, it was seen as a positive thing with the development of Saddam Hussein and Iraq generally. It's been seen by many countries as something that was a good thing that happened and really prevented Iraq's nuclear capabilities for a long period of time. And in that sense, I mean, I think it's a really major operation because it's one of the most known operations, from what I know, my opinion, regarding Israel and their military capabilities, and not only military, but intelligence. And if our previous events are talking about really foundational stuff, medically, legally, and environmental, here we're actually building upon that. Not only does Israel have these basic, military capabilities, but it can really execute a thought out, planning, complex operation that requires not only intelligence, but strategic planning and precise details and practice and, developed tools and equipment in order to execute such a thing. So it really is a level above that they're not only able to provide basic stuff foundationally, but they're also able to protect their civilians and the people of Israel from enemies that are far away. And that brings me to the last event, which is connected but not connected. It's personal for me as well. Talks about basically we'll tie everything together, so it's connected and not connected, but I wanted to bring it because I connected to it personally. So in June 12th, 2014, these 3 boys were kidnapped in Gush Etzion by Hamas terrorists. So their names are Eyal Yifrach, Naftali Frenkel, and Gilad Shaul. So I'll say my personal background, and I'll share a little bit about myself in this process, which I really like to do. And I think it's special that not only I get to share events, but also I get to share a little bit about myself as well. So 1 second, here we go. So I'm going to share a map first. One moment. Here we go. So where my dad is right now, where I'm from, is a place called Hachoma. So you can't see it right now for some reason. Here we go. Let's try to find it again. Okay. So this is Hachoma. It's the southern point of Jerusalem. It is beyond officially the 1967 border. So this little thing is Har Homa, but it's part of Jerusalem jurisdiction. There's no checkpoint you need to pass in order to get to Har Homa. So this road in Hebrew is where I'm from personally. So it's really near Bethlehem. And I see it from my balcony, actually. This is the way the neighborhood looks. But more importantly, what I wanted to point out is that right nearby, if this is Har Homa over here, then all along this yellow road is the Gush Etzion block, which is in the West Bank or Judea and Samaria, whatever term you prefer using, and which has become more consensus regarding being a part of Israel or in the future, but we'll see. So Elazar, Efrat, Alon Shfut, Kfar Etzion, Neve Daniel, all these places are part of the Gush Etzion block. And this is where also the kidnapping took place. So I'm explaining this whole thing is because I live nearby these people. These people are also religious, and they're people who, when this happened, I kind of, felt connected to, related to personally. I'll go back to their picture. So at the time in 2014 when this took place, I was in the Army. I was in my IDF spokesperson's course. And when you're in the Army, when you're on basic training or a course or, training generally, you can't have your cell phone. You can have it once a day in the evening for an hour. So I didn't really know what was going on, but because we were in the spokesperson's unit, you would have a news update once a day in the evening. And when they announced that these 3 boys were kidnapped, it was scary. I remember writing a song or writing something because I was so emotional. It really felt that it was people who I know and I connected to, and they were close to me. They were nearby. Even though I don't know them personally, I just felt it was, people who were like me for the first time when something like this happened. So I felt a connection. Also, I'll note that in my course, I was the only person who was religious and from Jerusalem and had this connection. So I really felt that personal bonded connection in that case. 18 days later, their bodies were found. And I don't know if you know, but in the recording, so one of the boys called the police. And in the recording they have of the police, you can hear gunshots. So it's assumed that they were shot in the car. But their bodies were found 18 days later in this operation called Brother's Keeper. And when they announced it in my course, I cried. I burst out crying. I was the only one in my course of 50 people who cried. It was for that same reason that I felt that they were people like me, people who were, they were teenagers. They were on their way to their yeshiva. Yes, they hitchhiked, but it's part of the culture that was done in the West Bank or Judea and Samaria, and it felt, unfair. It felt scary that this could happen in a place where you live and feel comfortable and that's your home. And also this is an important event because from this began Operation Protective Edge, which is the last war that took place in Israel. The last thing that I want to share is something that I wrote recently. I wrote in a year ago in Times of Israel blog, and it's about the 3 mothers, which I'm going to use to tie together this whole session. If you want the full blog, you can easily, I'm only Netta Asner on Times of Israel. And I'm happy to send it to you though anyways. Okay, so this happened in 2014, and I'm just continuing from the middle, so I don't want to read the whole thing. So since 2014, these 3 families have been promoting life, hope, and the importance of unity. And sorry, I didn't explain. This article that I wrote was because it was announced that the 3 mothers of these boys were going to be lighting one of the Independence Day torches for the first time in Israel's history. It was the first time that 3 people were lighting. They've had, usually 2 who light, but it was the first time that 3 people were going to be lighting, and they received special approval for that. So here, since 2014, these 3 families have been promoting life, hope, and the importance of unity. They have begun many initiatives, including the Jerusalem Prize for the Unity of Israel, which annually awards $28,000 and recognizes initiatives that promote the connection between Jews and Israel and the diaspora. These women are inspirational. They depict the beauty of Israel, the incredible strength, the bravery, and the extraordinary measures it takes to make the world a better place. They are living examples of Tikkun Olam. While many around the world in social media, on campuses, and in governments question and criticize Israel in various forms and fashions, these 3 women are the answer. They suffered an unfathomable tragedy and have strived to promote unity. They're making the world a better place, and this year Israel will thank them for their contribution. We unite to promise them that we will never forget their loss and show them that their courage is admired and is an inspiration to all of Am Yisrael. They will be lighting the torch in honor of the state of Israel on Independence Day. They've been truly lighting that torch since June 2014. Sorry. So sorry, it's really emotional for me because I lived through this personally and it really touches me. But just to tie everything together, this is really weird not to tie all these Jewish historical events, but Israel has been through a lot, not only 6 years ago, which seems weird that now it's history when it's 6 years ago, but to tie all the things together, we have really foundational moments that happen in Israel's history, whether it is medically, legally, or environmentally. But I think this last event that I highlighted really shares all of that, that when, push comes to shove and horrible things happen, we are united and we create incredible things. At the same time, we have that second level as well, that we show that we have the capabilities to protect one another and take care of one another. And I think that these three women really tie together all those ideas. That yes, I spoke about a lot of different subjects, about the water carrier and about, MADA and about, legally, and also the Operation Opera. But it really goes to show that being innovative, being thoughtful, uniting, and really creating something new that can help not only the foundation, but the future of Israel. So that is it for me. And those are the 5 events I highlighted, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And we're a small group, so feel free to unmute yourselves and ask anything you want. Okay, so yeah, so I don't know if it's okay that I'm sharing this, but Sarah was writing to me that that she is also, I think one was about the ambulances, that she's donated blood in Jerusalem and these ambulances twice when she was there. So it goes to show you how common that is. And you also wrote to me that you left 2 days before this all happened, and it feels like yesterday, and it definitely feels like yesterday. 6 years passed by just like that. I'm after my military service and my degree, and here we are 6 years later, and does not feel like 6 years in that it can be a historical event already. But there's already a TV show about it, so it is history in that case. Does anybody have any questions or notes or comments to add? Here, Sue, do you want to add something?
No.
Oh, okay. I saw you unmute yourself, so I was wondering if you.
Oh yeah, I just sort of okay.
No, it's okay. Whatever. If you don't have anything, it's fine. Also, if you have anything to add about any of the events, that's I'm happy to hear as well. Okay. One last chance. Oh, here. Oh no, okay, so I'm gonna correct myself. And Sarah said she would just use the Magen David services and did not donate blood. But I'm sorry that you had that experience. But they do great work. So it's really incredible that was founded in 1930 before Israel actually founded. If nobody has any questions, which is totally fine, but feel free. We are a small group and I'm happy to answer. And I know it's a lot of different subjects, so a lot happened in this past 45 minutes. But just to tie everything together, we can really see that 5 events that are really meaningful and foundational happened this week. Whether it is about various subjects, we can really see that in 1 week, a lot of these events really tied together in a sense. And I hope that tying them together in some way was more meaningful this time. And I hope to see you next week at 2 p.m. for more events that happened this week in Jewish history. And if you have questions afterwards, feel free to also email me. I appreciate that you all joined. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. And there's another session tonight at 7:30 about the 6-Day War if you are interested. I did a lot of research for it, so I'd be happy to see you there as well. Bye, everyone.